coming. There's people here I haven't seen for a long time, and from all over, but I better stick to my script. Welcome! This is really a special honor to have all of you here. I'm delighted that some of you have traveled a long way, which I'll get to in a minute. Before that, I'd like to introduce you to our family. Right in front of me, I have four of my grandchildren. Two are standing up, two are sitting there. Very good. These are Dan's two children and Keith's two children, Allie, Quinton, Orla, and Finn. And this is Dan and his wife Catherine. And I have Keith and his wife Janelle right here. And we're just kind of a haggle group, but eventually we'll get ourselves organized. But they have been fantastic and really helped a lot. I've got people here from all over, and it's very exciting. So let us know where you're from. I've got people from Red Deer. My neighbors down here. Oh, come on, you guys have to be louder than that. That's right. Those are my neighbors. And people from all over Alberta. And then we've got a large contingent from Saskatchewan. Hey, you Saskatchewan guys, you can be louder than that. And Manitoba? Nope, not Manitoba. That wasn't on my list either. But we have some who've come all the way from BC. A lot of history over in that corner. That's the Clapp family, and many of you have probably heard that name mentioned, but that's really exciting. But we have two special guests who come the farthest away, Jay Dixon and his wife Suzanne, who come from Ottawa, Ontario. Thank you. I feel very honored. Dawn had two sisters. The oldest one was Lynn, and she had three children. And they are here, all three children and their spouses. They're back at this back table here. Give us a wave. I think that's really cool that they're all here. And they've come from even one couple came from really southeastern Saskatchewan. It was a very long drive yesterday, but we're sure glad to see you. And then he had another sister, Norma. Dawn's sister Norma is right here. You've heard lots about her. But I can't tell you any bad stuff because I don't know any bad stuff. Norma had 4 kids. 2 of them can't be here, which is really too bad because those 2 guys were some of Dawn's favorite fishing buddies, along with the other son-in-law, Jeff, who's right here. Those were his 3 fishing buddies in Saskatchewan, and he just had a lot of fun with them. So 2 of Norma's kids are here, Lori and her husband, and Gord. That's it, Jeff, good, because you're the fishing guy. Good. Okay, I'm getting through here quickly. I only have 3 minutes, you know. Where's my friend Chuck? Brenton. Chuck Brenton, where are you? Oh, there he is! He's just so little. Chuck is going to be our MC for today. Chuck was Dawn's vice principal at Deer Meadow, and I think Chuck has a couple of stories probably to tell you about Dawn, yeah. But I have to tell you about Chuck. After he retired, his wife, who was still teaching, Jill, said, the winters are really cold. You shouldn't be here. You're retired now. I think you should go down to Arizona and stay with the McClearys for a month. So he did. And in that month, we'd invite, we'd say, we're going out to so-and-so. Would you like to come with us? No, Sandy, I don't have to be with people like you do. So I'm quite happy to just stay right here and read my book. But he was so easy to have around. I told him it was just like having a little brother. So I've been calling him my little brother ever since. So when he comes up, I'd like to introduce you to my little brother, the MC, Chuck. This winter, Dawn and I talked a lot, and one of the things we were talking about what's going to happen at the end, and he said, I want a celebration of life, but I want it to not be dreary. I want there to be lots of good stories, fun stories, funny stories told about me and on me. So that is what we are choosing to do today. And my little buddy, my little brother Chuck will get you organized. The other thing that Don wanted, this was a request, and he learned this from Jay Dixon's dad's celebration of life. He wanted a table where there would be a drink of scotch so his friends could have a drink of scotch on him. And I'm really, really happy to see how many of you did exactly that. I could see those little trays going, which is great, because that would make Don very happy that you're having a drink of scotch on him. Thank you very much. So, now I would like to introduce my little brother, Chuck Brenton, who will be your MC for this afternoon, and he'll give you all the rules. And some of the rules were given to by our friend Grant Spence over here, but you'll meet him too. Thank you. Have fun today. Go.
Okay. Thanks, Sandy. First of all, I want to give you a couple of apologies here before I start anything else. This 3-minute rule is really tough for somebody like me. So luckily I get to talk a whole bunch of different times, so if I get 3 minutes each, I'm going to wait for it. Couple of reminders here. If you have cell phones and so on, we'd appreciate it if you would put them on silent or turn them off or whatever. And I know I have mine in my pocket, and mine's not turned off because if I turn it off, my hearing aids go off. My hearing aids go off, and then who knows? So if you see me with my cell phone, I was only because I'm adjusting hearing aids. Those of you who come up to speak need to remember, please, to speak close to the mic. If anybody in the back, either direction cannot hear very well, just raise your hands. And whoever's speaking, you have to get just a little bit closer to the mic. I intend to make Don very happy with the free scotch. Okay? He wants me to have free scotch. I'm not going to turn him down. Okay. I do like the idea of the little brother, Sandy. You said you thought maybe I didn't like the idea as much as you do. I do like the idea of the little brother. However, it's hard to be a little brother to somebody that's only 4 foot nothing. Right? It would be a lot easier for Cindy to be a little sister because she's 4 foot nothing plus, you know. Yeah, something like that. Just a few other administrative things here before we get going. There are name tags on the tables, so if you haven't put one on and put your name on it, please do so. And we'd appreciate it if you'd put a little bit there about what your relationship was to Don, whether you were a friend, a farmer with him, or whatever. Okay? Secondly, the grandchildren, Allie and Quentin, will be bringing the yes book around probably at the end of the program to the various tables and asking you to sign your name there. And if you would also add a little anecdote of some sort, that would be appreciated as well, not just your name. We've already mentioned the scotch, so taking care of that. There's charcuterie boards of, I don't know what it's called, charcuterie, what it is, it's some fancy name. Anyway, it's over there, there's food there and so on, which you can go and have at the end of the program, rather than munching while people talk. There was an episode of NCIS a couple of years ago that was called The Stories We Leave Behind. And it was a tribute to Ducky. I don't know if you watch NCIS, but it was a tribute to Ducky and also a tribute to the person who played Ducky, which was David McCallum. And in the course of that particular episode, Ducky was quoted as saying that it's not just the stories we leave behind that we are remembered for, but more importantly, all the people we have touched and influenced while we have been here. And hopefully today you can see and hear both. You'll hear stories that endear Don to everybody, and you will also see lots of people that are very endeared to Don. We have about 8 speakers who Sandy has asked to speak today in one way or another. And these people have all been touched and influenced in some way by Don. They've been asked to keep stories and so on to about 3 minutes, which is not easy, okay, especially since many of the people talking are teachers. Trying to get a teacher to keep it short is difficult, as you can tell. Apparently Don's friend Grant, who's over here somewhere, wherever he is, suggested that we should keep speakers' limits to 3 minutes. And Warren apparently told Don at one point that he should keep his concerts to only 1 hour. So we're trying to keep each person's talk to 3 minutes, and the total program to not much more than an hour. Okay, so we'll see how we do. That's not all that easy, but supposedly we will do our best. Okay, so the first speaker is Dan, and Dan is going to give us some background on his dad and his dad's life.
Woo!
Thank you. Well, the other rule was you're supposed to.
That microphone.
I did come close. Okay, thanks. The other guy was to write it down, make sure that you can keep it under 3 minutes. So I'm going to also do what you're not supposed to do and read your presentation. And I mean, how do you summarize life in 3 minutes? Start at the beginning. So Dad was born in Nipawin, Saskatchewan in 1943 to Mac and Rita McCleary. And then also they moved to Saskatoon when Dad was very young, after Mom's father invited Dad's father to work together in Saskatoon. Yes, they'd known each other that long. They got married in 1968, moved to Alberta early in their teaching careers, and then never left. Well, many people that Keith and I grew up with knew him as the band teacher. What's happened later? Not many will know. He created thriving band programs multiple times.
You want me to read it?
No. Starting in Montgomery High School, in Calgary, where the teaching staff.
I brought you some vodka.
Thank you. Okay, I got a scotch here too. Starting in Montgomery High School, where I think we're going to hear some stories today, where the teaching staff there became friends for life. He also built a hog business, a rental business, and had multiple baseball teams. He started and built the hog business as a city slicker, with no knowledge of farming or livestock. He started with 2 barns, built the 3rd barn, lived through the fire in that 3rd barn and rebuilt the barn, and then leased a 4th barn to complete a thriving operation of over 2,000 head of hogs. And through that, he had to be creative. He once heard of another farmer who had converted a retired school bus into a transport vehicle, and then he did the same. Keith was about 5, swinging a wrench underneath those seats, unscrewing all the seats, making sure he can haul them out of the bus. I remember riding to market with Dad. I was probably about 7 years old or so. Riding right beside him in a totally safe lawn chair that was tied to the inside wall of the bus with Baylor twine. The 70s. In 1976, he was invited to lead the Olds Community Band for a couple of weeks, which turned into many years. And then in 1984, he was invited to help the waning high school band program in Olds at the high school. He inherited a program of about 12 kids across the 6 grades. And in 2 years, he had 250 students. Again, all while keeping the farm operation going with some questionable help from his 2 sons. In 1993, he convinced Mom to get a rental property to augment their income for retirement. In turn, this blossomed into a full-blown rental business with more than 50 doors in both Olds and Sundre that set them up well for traveling and being snowbirds in Mesa for the last 18 years. While there, they met many new long-term friends. I'm assuming we're going to hear maybe some stories about that today too. Dad played slow pitch, he coached, he guided other coaches, and eventually became the baseball commissioner for the park. That baseball community has now created an annual Don McCleary Award recognizing the player who has best exhibited sportsmanship and teamwork. I need scratch. Finally, I can't talk about Dad without mentioning the lake. During retirement, there were 2 places Dad had to get to as soon as possible. Every year, Arizona and Emma Lake. To illustrate this point, for a few years, Dad and Mom didn't even have a fixed address in Alberta. At the lake, being surrounded by his sister Norma and her kids and their extended families was his happy place. He loved fishing with anyone who would be up for it, and of course, the Saturday night get-togethers. Finally, I do want to say a couple of words about Dad's final years, because it was a confusing time for everybody. It took about 5 years to eventually be diagnosed with progressive supranuclear palsy, which is a rare degenerative brain disease that affects the processing part of the brain. That meant that unlike Alzheimer's, his memory was always sharp as a tack, but language and decisions were a struggle. He knew the names of every nurse that helped him, the phone number of friend's grocery store, what date they flew home the year before, and he knew and remembered every person who visited him, even if he couldn't string a sentence together or choose whether he wanted milk or water with lunch. He also knew that a sense of humor is one of the most important things. He made jokes every day. So thank you to everyone who stopped by. You may not know how much that was appreciated in the moment, and very much long afterwards. So cheers to Dad.
Cheers to that.
I think I'm going to need another one of those scotches. Grant, I need another one of those scotches. Cindy, I need another one of those scotches. Okay, part of, I guess, the job as MC is to try and keep things moving, but also kind of keep things a little bit light. I know Dad mentioned when John met Sandy and they got together, and what attracted, I remember talking to Don about what attracted him to Sandy. And he said, well, she has such a bubbly little personality. She's always smiling. Thank you, Don. Anyway, he said that she had a very, very lighthearted, very bubbly personality. She was a very pretty little thing. And he absolutely loved her big eyes. And I thought, okay, well, those are all very, very nice. And then it wasn't that long after I talked to Don about this, he had arranged for us to go to a ball game down in Arizona. And he said, I'll pick you up early because we're going to go for lunch. I said, okay, that sounds great. So he picked me up, we're on our way to lunch, and we pull into a place called Hooters. And I said, is this where we're going for lunch? He said, yeah, I told you, I like big eyes. That's a true story. That's not But on a little more serious note, Sandy also told me to sort of explain just very, very quickly how Don passed. And Don passed away very, very quietly and quickly from a heart attack while he was working on some physio at the Taylor View Towers, where he was living at the time. And probably you couldn't ask for a better way to go. It was very quick. He was with the physio person who he really liked, and Sandy was right there with him. And there wasn't a lot of suffering, and it didn't last a long time. So for anyone who was wondering, well, what really was the cause, that was it. And that's all we're going to say about it, other than keep in mind that maybe we all should be lucky to go in such a pleasant manner. Yeah. Okay, I'd like to invite Don's niece and nephew, Lori Coben and Gord Hubbard, to share some memories from their visits on the farm.
And just for the record, there's 2 of us, we get 6 minutes.
Okay, this may be harder than I thought, but my name is Lori Coben, and I am one of Uncle Don's 7 nieces and nephews. The rest are back here. My mom, Norma Hopper, is Don's sister. His oldest sister, Lynn Doty, has already passed in 2008. And I know Don and Lynn are together again today, probably smiling, laughing, and maybe even arguing over cards. Cheers to Auntie Lynn and Uncle Don. When I think of Uncle Don, I picture him doing what he loved most. Out on the northern lakes, fishing with his nephews, always at the wheel of the boat. He was the driver, the steady hand, the guide, and he always had a smile on his face, morning to night. That smile was his trademark. Don had a special gift for the joy in every day. A good card game, a Blue Jays win, or a plate of butter tarts and peanut butter squares could make his whole day. He had his favorite sayings, like, don't shuffle the spots off those cards, walk and talk. Yeah, that was for one person. And of course, this one's also for one person, but it worked for him. And of course, the ever useful, yes, dear. Those little phrases are etched in our memories, and I know they'll still make us smile whenever we repeat them. Family meant everything to Don. We are so fortunate to have had 4-generation gatherings together at Emma Lake, where Saturday night suppers became a tradition. And it was Don who made those evenings even more special, always ready to sponsor a glass of scotch, often accompanied by a perfectly cooked beef tenderloin that he had purchased. The truth is, Don showed up for us every time, in big ways and in smaller ways. He was the kind of uncle who would lend a hand without hesitation, and sometimes that meant lending more than a hand. Sometimes it meant lending his sense of humor. I'll never forget my stagette. I made it very clear that I did not want a stripper. Very clear. But somewhere along the way, an idea was hatched, and Uncle Don, well, he was a willing participant. Off he went with my dad to the pharmacy to buy 1 condom and a couple of balloons, add a trench coat and a bucket hat. And suddenly Uncle Don had reinvented himself. He popped out of the cake, danced with his back to me, and gave the rest of the room quite a show. There's photographic evidence in the slideshow, just in case you doubt me. That was Don, kind, playful, and always ready to make people laugh.
My My name's Gord, so this is my sister, and I am, Don was my uncle. I was lucky enough to spend a couple of weeks for multiple summers at Don and Sandy's farm. As a city kid, the farm was a world of adventure and incredible memories. Since Don wasn't my parent, he got to be something even more fun, a freewheeling mentor who led our adventures with that signature chuckle of his. Everything on the farm was new and exciting for me. Don taught me to ride a horse, but not before I learned to feed, brush, saddle, and care for the horse. We got to cuddle with the rabbits after the cages were cleaned. Don was a master of disguise, and by that I mean disguising chores as fun. I earned the privilege of mowing the lawn with the riding lawnmower tractor by weeding the garden first. The one activity that didn't seem to have a character-building prerequisite, which was probably should have, was driving the old truck with the 3-speed stick shift on the wheel. I think it should have had a prerequisite. I remember jerking, stalling, lurching, grinding gears, and speeding in random directions all over the field, with Don laughing out loud saying, "Don't worry, you'll get it." I learned to fish, to fillet, to snare gophers, to muck out pig stalls, all the glamorous stuff. But one memory stands out. Don had just finished building a new pig pen, and it was all hands on deck to move the pigs from the old to the new pen. My job was to stand there and wave my arms if pigs ran towards me, just to steer them back in the right direction. Now, as an animal-loving 8-year-old, I'd always wondered why nobody rode pigs. They seemed about the right size. So when one of the smaller ones came my way, I seized the moment and I jumped on. Well, that thing took off like a bolt of lightning. I was holding on for dear life as it sped towards the pen. And ahead of me, all I could see were 2 fence posts that it was about to squeeze through. In my heroic version of the story, I reached out, grabbed the post, and gracefully swung off like the gymnast that I was. I think I even believed that story for a number of years. But in reality, it was the strong arm of my ever-reliable Uncle Don that scooped me off the pig just in time, preventing me from becoming a cartoon pancake. That moment, equal parts chaos, laughter, and love, sum up Don pretty well. He let you try, he let you fail, and he was always there to catch you before things got out of hand. I will never forget the adventures or the man who made them so special.
We will all miss Uncle Don deeply, but we will carry him with us in every family gathering at the lake, every Saturday supper, every Blue Jays game, and every laugh we share over butter tarts, cards, or scotch. His joy, his generosity, his humor, those are the gifts he leaves with us. And though today we say goodbye, I know Uncle Don would want us to keep smiling. He'd want us to walk and talk, to say yes dear when needed, and to never shuffle the spots off the cards. We love you, Uncle Don. Thanks for the memories. And one more thing. On behalf of my cousins, and on account of him checking out early, the final word is wussy. It's an inside joke.
Okay, you spoke about lending a hand. I need to tell you a little story from down in Mesa last winter. And we got phone calls, a number of us in this room got phone calls from Sandy saying, we need help over here. So, okay, we went over to the house. And John had tried to get into bed, but he missed the bed and ended up on the floor. And Sandy couldn't lift him, obviously. So she phoned a whole bunch of us to come over and try and get him off the floor. But you have to look at these kind of things with humor, okay, and fun, because we were all laughing trying to get Don off the floor. There's 3 or 4 of us guys, including Warren and Brian and so on, trying to get him off the floor and get him up into the bed. And we were having a very difficult time, so I climbed up onto the bed itself and started pulling him. And then I looked at Dawn and I said, Dawn, if you go around telling anybody you have me in bed with you, I've got guys here that can testify. Nothing happened. Okay? But we did get him, you know. Okay, Sandy, before I call Sandy up, she has a story to tell about, I think this one is about having to do with band. But before I call her up, I need to remind you and Sandy of one of Don's favorite anecdotes. And he said, being with Sandy is often like taking a dog out for a walk. Squirrel. Squirrel. Oh, squirrel. Trying to keep Sandy on a straight line and telling a story. Squirrel. Right? And then Sandy, of course, an anecdote that she would come up with is, oh, look, Dawn, there's someone over there on the sidewalk. I don't think I know them. Can we invite them for dinner? Okay, squirrel lady, you're on.
That's okay, I have a little stool that helps. Well, so far we're doing great at keeping things jovial, just like what Dawn wanted. But I have to tell you about Dawn's band assignments. As most of you know, I've known Dawn since we were 4 years old, and I saw him grow up. He was always gentle, nice, and fun-loving. In grade 9, he decided to try out for the football team. He got knocked down, thought, this is stupid, got up and joined the choir. At that time, he was in a very prestigious Saskatoon Boys Choir, and he really loved it. It was under wonderful direction, but he loved choir. But his first year of university was faculty of agriculture. An interesting choice, as he had never lived on a farm. He had just visited the farm of his brother-in-law and his older sister during the summers. Don learned how to play bridge that year at university, and as he had done well in high school, he had not learned good study skills. He flunked out. The rules at the University of Saskatchewan were that if you flunked out, you could return to university the next year, but you had to choose a different college. So he chose music education. Music had been in his home all his life, and he loved singing in the Saskatoon Boys Choir. Now, in the 60s at the University of Saskatchewan, to get a music degree, a student didn't have to take anything about band if one didn't want to. As he loved choir, he only learned that medium. Upon graduation, he was immediately hired by the Calgary School Board to be a music general teacher at a junior high school in Calgary. The following June, he was told he would be moved to a different school, Montgomery Junior High, where he was to build a band program. Dawn and I were getting married that summer and had plans for our honeymoon, but I suggested that instead of the honeymoon plans we had, maybe he should go to summer school and take some classes about band and instruments. Nope, we're getting married and we are going to honeymoon at Emma Lake at your mother's cabin. And so we did. The first day of school at Montgomery Junior High, Don told the kids that he had never been in a band and he didn't know anything about it any more than they did. But they were going to get help. The music department sent weekly to the classroom a woodwind guy to teach the kids how to play woodwinds. Another guy came on another day to teach brass to the brass kids. The kids and Don sopped up the information, and the band program at Montgomery Junior High flourished. So Don built something from nothing. Don built something from nothing without even knowing what he was doing. Many from that staff over 50 years ago are here today, You can show us who you are. That's 50 years ago. Look at that. That's fantastic. But also, I think what's interesting about this story is when he went pig farming, he didn't know anything about that either. He was pretty adventurous. Anyway, thank you. On you go.
Thanks, Sandy. No offense. Oh, this one I'll just put over here. Okay. So thanks very much, Sandy. And now I'd like to introduce Jim Taves, who is a colleague of Don's, going back to this 1968 school at Montgomery in Calgary. And from what I understand, he has some party and music stories to tell. I'm interested to hear about this.
Okay, thank you. Sam, I always call her Sam. I've known her for 57 years. So if I call her Sam instead of Sandy, it's her fault. Okay? So, Don McCleary, the Big Mac. What can I say about Don? Or rather, what should I not say about Don in a public setting like this? When I think of the Don McCleary that I know, my thoughts are always happy thoughts. Yes, I'm sad he's not here anymore, but my thoughts of Don are flooded with the fun times we had working and playing together over the past 6 decades. Don was a new teacher at Montgomery Junior High School way back in 1968 when he came, and we sort of hit it off right from the very start. Don was the band teacher, and what a great band teacher he was. Don was the sort of band teacher who had that uncanny ability to pull hidden music out of kids that had little or no musical history at all, just like he was. And most of the memories of Don come straight out of the fun and crazy antics that we pulled off as a group of young musicians, enthusiastic, ready to go conquer the world. But crazy things happened in that school, and a lot of them can be attributed to my friend Don. Like if you left your classroom door open, don't be surprised if Don might walk by and shoot you with a water pistol in front of your social studies class. Or sometimes he would just come bouncing a basketball through your class, and then innocently disappear back into the staff room with a big smile on his face. And you know that McCleary smile, the one that lights up every room it comes into. And all the kids loved those silly antics because it added a little excitement to their sometimes boring classes. And all of us worked hard to create the sort of safe place where kids wanted to come and learn. And that's why when teachers like Don got to the school at 7 o'clock in the morning, you'd see the kids lined up, waiting for the doors to be unlocked so they could get to their band practice or some other school activity. And Don was always a willing participant in the weekly Wednesday night staff workout sessions, where we would play basketball or some other sport for a couple of hours and then go solve all the world's problems in the Bonus Bar. And it was Don who brought the Alberta Hunter Training Survival Program to our school. It was a program where the kids learned about the native plants and animals in Alberta and survival skills. And all those classroom sessions culminated in a camping trip up near Caroline, where there were no tents allowed because the kids had been taught how to build their own shelters, how to cook their own meals over open fires, and they did it in groups of 4 for 4 days. And as far as I remember, they all survived. And I remember Don was always in a good mood as he and I trudged through the bush late at night, checking on each of the lean-to sites, making sure the girls were in theirs, the boys were in theirs, and never the twain shall meet. And I don't have time to talk about all the crazy adventures we had together, like singing under our principal's window at midnight because he didn't come to the basketball practice, or no, I can't go there. And as I think back over my 57 years of knowing Don, I've come to one conclusion. Don McCleary was definitely a bad influence on me. But Don was actually the perfect music teacher because he was able to teach us all, students and staff alike, to enjoy ourselves through music. So I can't think of a better way to celebrate Don than with some music. Okay? And so, I'm going to ask the Montgomery Junior High School staff choir to come up to perform for you today. So as they come up, come on Montgomery staff choir, as they come up, I want to tell you that this choir has been practicing under Don's careful direction at staff parties for over 50 years. In fact, at our last practice was just a couple of weeks ago, when 20 enthusiastic staff choir members showed up at our place and for a little reunion and a sing-song, and we were so damn good that I insisted that we come to honor Don today. And you notice that we have a gut bucket. Don always played the gut bucket wherever we were. And in his absence, Sam here has been promoted to first bucketeer in the band. So where's that Montgomery group? Come on up here.
While they're coming up, I just want to tell you that all through the years of Don's teaching, when people would say, "Oh, you're a band teacher, what instrument do you play?" His answer was always gut bucket. So this really is a perfect thing to be doing today.
Whoa! Look at this group. We've been getting together for 50 years to celebrate with Don, and look at, they're all here. We had a couple of phone calls just before we came and said, "Geez, I can't make it, I can't make it, I can't make it." It's okay, we'll look after it. So, okay, the song is "Take Me Home, Country Roads," and if we are singing, then you got to be singing too. That's one of Don's rules. So join us if you know the words. What key? Okay. Okay, 2-0. G. One, two, three. Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountain, Shenandoah River. Older than the trees, younger than the mountains, going like a breeze. Country road. watch out, that could be an encore, you know. You want to do arm like that? Sure. Okay, we had a request. You always say that when you don't get a request. How about You Are My Sunshine? You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Everybody clap. Into the sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
I just have to tell you, when Jim retired, he retired from Calgary, and it was a pretty prestigious retirement. And this crew appeared out of a side room to sing a song that we created for Jim. And Don came out of the side room. This is quiet, pretty not assuming Don. He came out of the side room like this.
Wow, that's a tough act to follow. I'm glad I'm not Linda and Dale Leister, because the very next up on the agenda here is some story about the farm. So, Linda? Dale? Okay. Thank you to Jim and all the Montgomery crew. Fantastic.
No. Good afternoon. My husband Dale, and Dale, just give a wave so people know who you are, because he's kind of the hero of the story. No, I'm good. My husband Dale and his friend Dawn taught together at the Calgary Board of Education. Dawn decided to leave teaching and buy a farm northwest of Olds, Alberta. He planned to buy 1,200 piglets and raise them for market. He also bought 2 head of cattle, hamburger and hot dog. Dale was always the entrepreneur, so we invested in the pig operation with Don and his wife Sandy. Sandy loved the rural life, but she found that they were very tied down with livestock and they needed a holiday. They knew that Dale and I had teachers' holidays, so they arranged a 4-day, 3-night trip to Las Vegas during spring break with their friends Bill and Lynn Esham. Dale and I had 1 day of crossover time with Dawn and Sandy before they left. Neither of us knew anything about pigs. Day 1. Dale put his overalls on and fed the pigs. The Quonset had an automatic manure cleaner. Don had been very clear that the pigs liked to lie on the manure belt because it was cool. So he told Dale, start and stop the machine a couple of times to make sure the pigs move off. Dale went into each pen, shoveled the manure onto the automatic cleaner, started and stopped the manure belt several times, then said to dump the manure into a wagon that was hooked up to a tractor. All went well. As the day was ending, Dale asked me to go get hamburger and hot dog from the field so he could spread the manure. Off I went into the field, opened the gate, and wandered in, calling the boys. They both came running at top speed. I took off home, but it was like the running of the bulls, and I was not doing well. I jumped up on the fence as they went thundering by. They were munching happily at the feed trough by the time I got back. Dale came by with the tractor, and I hopped on the back, glad to be riding and not running. Dale started to spread the manure, but suddenly there was manure pelting down on us, on our head. Dale fumbled with the speed of the manure spreader and turned it up instead of down. We were covered with the smelly, greasy pig manure. He finally got the speed down, but I could hardly wait for him to finish so I could have one of many showers. Day 2. No misadventures, so Dale and I decided to go into Olds and see a movie. Despite numerous hot showers, the smell of pig manure still lingered, especially in Dale's mustache. We noticed that no one sat near us during the show. Dale went to check the barns before going to bed and was met with a disaster. The barn with the little piglets had flooded, and the pigs came floating out the door. Who knew that pigs could swim? I corralled the piglets while Dale shut off the water. Pigs are very curious animals, and they had fussed with the water tap until it broke off the wall. We moved the piglets to a dry part of the barn and got to bed at about 2 a.m., hoping that all our troubles were behind us. That was not the case. Day 3. Dale cleaned the Quonset in the afternoon, shoveling the manure onto the automatic manure cleaner. He started and stopped the machine a couple of times to get the pigs to move off. As he pulled the switch, we immediately heard terrible screaming. Dale shut off the machine and ran into the pen. A pig had got her leg caught under the barrier between the pens. He was dragging Mildred out of the pen and kicking away the other pigs with his foot as they tried to goose him with their cold noses. Some of the pigs rushed out of the pen, free at last. They began opening the other pens with their snouts. The worst thing you can do is mix up pigs from one pen to another. To stop them from going any further along the Quonset, I got a sheet of plywood and held it up at the end of the row. There was a moment of silence, and then the pigs saw the plywood as a target and started running toward it as fast as they could. I went ass over tea kettle as the pigs stampeded over me. The rest of the day was spent getting the pigs back into the right pens. Day 4. Sandy and Dawn came back, tanned and relaxed from a great haul. Dale immediately told Dawn about Mildred. Dawn took one look at her, got his rifle, and shot our darling Mildred right in front of us. It put us off pork for a long time. Maybe pig farming wasn't worth it.
Well, it's a good thing this isn't Red Deer's Got Talent or something. These last 2 acts will be very hard to vote on, that's for sure. Interesting, though, that Jim, you mentioned that you thought Dawn was a bit of a bad influence. Well, I have to tell you, a lot of the image we have of Dawn is he's this happy, kind, sweet little giant. But I have to tell you, there was another side to Dawn. A short while before he passed, we were sharing a scotch in his room at Taylor Towers. And he said to me he had a couple of favorite memories from Deer Meadow. And these are his favorite memories. Okay, keep that in mind. One of those is how he repeatedly, go back to the pigs, how he repeatedly went into my office where he could use the phone so he could phone and get the latest hog prices. and that he loved writing those prices all over my desk calendar because he knew how much it ticked me off. And this is him recounting one of his favorite times, his favorite things at Deer Meadow. Okay, big sister, you're on again. Another school bus story.
Thank you. At the back where the pictures and memorabilia is, there's a picture of the bus, the school bus that Don made to haul pigs in. And Keith and Dan had a ball crawling under the bus and unscrewing the seats. Did you unscrew any of the seats, Dan? Oh, he doesn't think so. It was all Keith's fault. I'm not. He was Mr. Mechanic, Keith, and he unscrewed every one of those seats on the school bus. Then Don put plexiglass between the driver's seat and the pigs in the back. Then he cut out the back door and welded a door that he could slide up and down to load and unload the pigs. The windows could be opened or closed depending on the weather. This was a perfect way to haul pigs. To get to market, Fletcher's Fine Food in Red Deer, it was called Fletcher's at that time, Don's best route was to drive through the center of Red Deer, down the main street, Gates Avenue. One summer day, he noticed a lot of people sitting and standing along the road. He had to slow down, so that meant the pigs had to put their feet up on the windsill and look out to see why they were slowing down. And a little kid saw the pigs and yelled, "Look, Mom, there are pigs in that bus!" And everyone clapped and cheers. Don didn't realize it, but he and the pigs were leading the summer fair parade.
Thanks, Sandy. I'm going to have to take back this squirrel business because you've been great online all the time. Warren Phillips was Don's assistant superintendent and hired Don to teach in Olds. Warren also shared lake life out at Ammo Lake with the McClearys and was also part of the Fountain of the Sun community with a place down in Arizona. So in a large variety of ways, Warren has had a lot to do with Don, so I'm going to ask him to tell us what you would like to tell us.
He thinks I need the stool.
Yeah, I think you do.
Just while Don is getting on the stool, I have to just mention one story about Chuck and Don. We were at the hospital this spring, and Chuck was massaging Don's feet. And after he was finished that, he said, "There, Don, what can Sandy do that I can't do?" And Don said, "Sex." So, never quite knew what we were going to Those of you that know me know that I tend to get a little emotional at times, and I found a good trick is to ask somebody to stand in the corner, and when I get emotional, that person should just open their blouse. So the other two go back. We're ready. Sandy asked us if we would say a few words about Don today, and we're very honored to do so. However, Sandy went on to say, "You're limited to 3 minutes." Now keep in mind, this is Sandy that said that. It took her more than 3 minutes to say goodbye. In fact, one of Don's well-used lines, as we've already heard, was, "Walk and talk, Sandy, walk and talk." I think that's our warning that we might be more than 3 minutes. In the early 1990s, Don was invited by the principal of the old high school to a meeting, and went there with the expectation that the meeting would be about their son Keith. When he got home, Sandy asked him what the meeting was about, and Don replied, "I think I've just been offered the position of band teacher at the high school." It turned out that it was the first step in an interview process, and we did hire him for that position. Even though he had been out of teaching for several years and his only experience with band was teaching junior high, he accepted the challenge and worked very closely with Barry Below to develop some further band skills to build a first-rate grade 7 to 12 program. He moved from there to Deer Meadow School when it opened and created a top-tier program there, with his bands often achieving top honors at music festivals. As well, he developed strong friendships and great admiration for the administration, Dot Negropontis and Chuck Brinton. Well, at least he had great admiration for Dot.
Our son Matt was in Don's band at Deer Meadow, and so we got some insights from him, as well as from all of the band concerts that we attended and more in visiting the school, and some things that we came to know about. Don was a wonderful teacher for young people. His goal was to teach every student, and band was the vehicle that he used to teach them.
Students were expected to see themselves as musicians, albeit musicians at the beginning of their journey. They weren't learning about band, they were musicians who formed a band. Jill, I need you.
I'm here for you.
There were meaningful roles for all students, and each was an important member of the group.
He had some innovative approaches to classroom management. Matt recalled on the first day of school, Don warned the students that if they didn't behave, he was going to take them to the office with their instrument in their mouth sideways. Matt said, he said it with a smile, but he wasn't quite sure because he played the clarinet. He didn't really want to find out if that was true or not. He was an excellent organizer. The band concerts featured every group. The students marched into the gym, sat in a semicircle with their bands. One band would perform, and within a minute, the next band would be starting to play. Concerts always started on time, and they lasted about 59 minutes. Each year, we were amazed at the growth of the bands from their fall to their spring concerts. The change in musicality of the beginner bands was incredible. They moved from playing all the same notes in unison in the fall to actually making complex and pleasing music by their spring concert.
I was nominally in charge of the band program, and so I spent quite a bit of time studying Don and Barry Below to determine what qualities made them such outstanding band teachers. And one of the skills that they had was that both of them believed that they could and would teach all students to be successful in band. The second one, probably even more important, was they were both from Saskatchewan. And third, and definitely the most important, was they both liked Scotch in great quantities. True characteristics of the outstanding band teachers.
When I was the public librarian in Olds, I asked Don and Sandy to teach a beginning course in introductory bridge. The participants ranged from the nervous Nelly beginners, I was one of them, to those who had played a lot of cards. The Macs both demonstrated their exemplary teaching skills, making the game understandable, fun, and non-threatening, and helped many of them to become avid bridge players. Their instructional booklet, a cheat sheet if you like, is still making the rounds with beginner bridge players almost 30 years later, and I noticed it sitting on the table back there as one of the memorabilia. In our personal life, we had a lot of connections with Don and Sandy. We both have cabins in Emma Lake, and we shared many decades of happy memories with them. Visits, dinners, boat rides. Dawn often took Warren fishing, and we enjoyed wonderful fish feeds together. The Macs were a big part of our decision to buy in Fountain of the Sun in Arizona, and we spent more than a decade enjoying their company there. At Emma, both couples gladly hosted a variety of friends that we've met in Arizona at the lake. When Kurt and Ellen Nelson were visiting during our usual boat tour of the lake, Dawn headed towards a channel that would take us from one part of the lake to the other. As he typically did, he would gun the motor to ensure that the boat was on plane, but the channel wasn't visible, and it looked like we were heading straight for shore with the motor gunned. Ellen grabbed her hand and went, "Oh dear, oh dear." It was a moment of heart-stopping fear that she still talks about today.
When we lived in Olds, Don invited me to play on the Eagle Hill slow pitch team. He had a simple philosophy: don't get hurt, do your best, have fun. He believed that all players should feel.
So we do.
He believed that all players should feel. I want joke. All right, here we go. Don believed that all players should feel good about their contributions to the team. This was vividly demonstrated one night when one of the teams were short of players, and so the 11-year-old son helped out and filled in to play. Don made it clear before he got up to bat the first time that this player was to get at least to first base. What we didn't know was that a youngster could run like the wind and scored every time he came out of the bat. We lost the game. We do want to touch on some of the qualities that made Don such a special person. He was extremely generous with his time, his talents, and his scotch. For example, he spent countless hours with and providing leadership to the FOS slow pitch, as he did with the Olds Community Band some years before.
Don was a gentle giant. He embodied the ideal of a man who possessed great inner strength and operated from a set of clearly defined principles of fairness, kindness, doing your best, the importance of teamwork, and having fun. Everyone here would agree that Don was a people person. He had the ability to form lasting friendships with a variety of people. He recognized the good in people, and he built relationships on that basis.
Don was a bit of a ladies' man. In fact, I was a little envious of the number of women who would give Don a hug. Even though I was standing next to him and knew the person, the result often was a hug for Don and "Hi, Warren." I asked Donna if she knew why this happened. She replied, "No, I don't, Dr. Phillips."
We're very fortunate to have known Don and to have had he and Sandy as friends, and they've enriched our lives in numerous ways. We miss them, but we're thankful for all the wonderful times that we shared.
Thank you, Phillipses. Thank you, Phillipses. I have one more story to tell you about Don recounting his favorite times at Deer Meadow. This is back again to the last scotch we shared. Only this one is a much more serious one, and it's one that he was immensely proud of. And anybody who knew Don when he taught at Deer Meadow, and anybody who knew Dot Neighbor-Pontus would know that Don thought the world of Dot. And one of the proudest things in his life, he told me, was the fact that whenever people came to visit Deer Meadow School, which many people did because it was sort of a model middle school, Dot would always take these people down to Don's band class. And once a week, Don took over 100 students at the same time. And he did this to provide an opportunity for the teachers of that grade to all meet together and do some planning and so on together. So if it was a Tuesday, 11 o'clock, it might be all grade 5 teachers would go to this meeting, and Don would take all 100 and some kids at one time in the band room. And he was so proud of the fact that Don always brought people down to his band room and said, you think you've got a crowded classroom, look at what this man does. It's absolutely amazing. Don used to tell a lot of wild stories about band festivals and his time there with Barry Below. It sounds like they both learned a lot from each other, but I think they also corrupted each other in various ways. So this is your opportunity, Barry Below, to tell your side of the story. We've all heard about it from Don's point of view. Barry Below.
I just love this sound. Probably the worst thing a guy should do or could do is correct the gentleman's son, Dan, on the place of birth. I think Don's birth certificate said Carrot River.
Oh, I
He
got
t-
corrected on that myself.
He
So
told
we're
me,
both wrong.
we compared birth certificates, because mine says Carrot River, Saskatchewan.
Oh.
Norma,
We'll chat
where
later.
was Don born?
Garrett and Nipon.
Nipawin. That's
No, he lived there, but he, anyway. We found out we were both from upper northeast Saskatchewan and loved every minute of it. I'm so glad to hear so many people speak about Scotch. Because my wife read my little thing here that I was told to write out and read. And there's a lot of Scotch mentioned in there. And I didn't want to be the only one. So here, I have to have a quick preamble to the build-up to meeting Don. I started teaching in Sexsmith in September of 1973. No one could graduate university, receive one check in September, and then attend a conference in October before the second check even got to you. In 1974, I knew a little bit about the conference and what the convention and what they offered, but in those days it went Edmonton, Calgary, and so in 1974 the convention was in Calgary. Well, that's about an 8-hour drive from my doorway to a hotel in Calgary, being up in Sexsmith. So I didn't go. In 1975, it was back in Edmonton. I knew a whole lot more about the conference at this time, speaking to the other teachers in Grand Prairie and the folks in the music industry that came up to sell us instruments and etc. I did go to Calgary once from up there, but it's tough to do a 16-hour drive, do a little, and I mean a little, bit of socializing at that time, and get home for supper at Sunday night and still try and be an attentive dad and hubby and wake up Monday morning and be kind of a half-decent teacher at school. I never went again from up there. It was impossible. I only went every other year from then on. Moved to Didsbury in 1984. Met Sandy at a local music gathering, and throughout the year I also got to know Don. By the time Don re-entered the band teaching world in 1985, we had become friends. Carol and I had enjoyed numerous evenings of playing bridge and socializing with the McClearys. Don and I made plans to attend the convention, but in 85, that year it was back in Grand Prairie. And I knew that because I was up there in 82 and 83 and we were planning to host the convention. Anyway, we found a young lady that was trying to get more, she had her drivers, she had her pilot's license, and she wanted to get more hours built up. So for a pretty good deal, we got to pay most of the rental of the plane and probably all the fuel for her to get in all these hours of flying us up to Grand Prairie and back. And so it worked out good. By the time we arrived at our hotel, checked in, went up to our room to get ready to go down to the welcoming reception, it was already in full swing. We were met at the entrance by a fellow from National Music, who were the host of the welcoming reception, whose job was to greet us and give each delegate a free drink ticket. Thank you, Russ. But the actual number under the table and behind the back was about 6 or 7 or 8, which helped a lot. Thanks again, Russ. Don and I went to the bar, got ourselves a nice drink of a single malt scotch, which we really both enjoyed, found a place to sit and did a toast to the first of the weekend. As fate would have it, while we were drinking the first drink, there was a total power outage. Complete blackout and total silence. I hollered out, "Don't drink the scotch!" The emergency lights around the side came on and Don was absolutely losing it. He figured that was one of the quickest, funniest things he thought ever. Other people thought, why is he saying that? And Don said, he went blind and deaf for crying out loud from drinking scotch. It took him, he told me later, he said, I explained that to a lot of people and I finally got tired of it. They said, but it was just a power outage. Okay, fine. The convention settled into being in Red Deer for a lot of years after that. Not the geographical center of Alberta, but certainly the center population-wise. A few years along the way, a very good friend of mine from Dawson Creek, Lan Lawrence. And I have to do this. Lan's widow is here with us tonight. If you would wave and say hi. He got out of teaching and went into private teaching, playing his instrument. He was an awesome musician. And soon after that, into instrument repair. Dawson Creek just wasn't large enough to make a living doing that, so he moved to Calgary. He got in touch with me and asked if I was attending the conference, and if so, could he share a room? Well, I sadly told him that I already had a bunkie and that we had been doing this for several years now. I felt very bad because I knew that Lan was a great guy and I knew he would have to share a room with someone in order to be able to afford to go to the convention. And he needed to drum up some business in what he was taking on. He also got into instrument repair and did very well. I approached Don, told him about Lan, told him that he was a very good guy, and could we consider letting him bunk in with us on a cot? Don was great. He just said right off the bat that this would work out. If I thought Lan was a good guy, then Don would think he was a good guy. And so he was all in favor. So we became sort of a threesome at all these conventions. Sort of the three amigos. After 3 or 4 years, the aforementioned Russ, wave at me again, Russ? Thanks. Became a bit of a disturber. We were standing waiting for an elevator, and Russ, the disturber, started saying stuff like, Lan, do you always get the cot? Do they charge you 1/3 of the room cost? If so, why do you always get the cot? Don walked up real close to Lan and me, looked down at us, way down. Lan and I were both about 5 foot, not much. He simply said, I am not sleeping on a cot. Okie dokie. So I thought it was time to defend my status. I said, I've been coming to this thing long before I invited either one of you. I still do all the booking. It's not always easy to convince. It was the Capri in Red Deer, which is now something else altogether. It's not always easy to convince them that you need a cot. But we did. I said, we were very good friends from different parts of the province. I never said Olds and Didsbury. They wouldn't have known anyway. But I said, we're not good enough friends to have just 2 beds. So we would really like a cot. So I said, I do all that. I said, I'm the oldest of the 3 of us. And I'm not only am I having a bed, but I'm having the one closest to the bathroom. That was okay. Lad said, okie dokie. But Russ managed to keep that up once every year at least. Are you still on the cot, Lad? Okay. Why don't you get a band then? We were very happy going to Red Deer for lots of years. And someone in the ABA, that's the Alberta Band Association, not the Alberta Brewers Association, decided it would be neat to hold it in Banff. Because Banff is so beautiful that time of year. We hated it. Hate's a strong word, but Don and I, and Lan, hated it. You had to drive to everything. When it was at the Capri and Red Deer, all you really had to do was Sunday morning remember where you parked your car on Thursday. And that was about the end of that part. But it was in Banff. Now, we picked a hotel. There was not a hotel in Banff that would roll in a cot. So I do not remember if Lan went that year or if we hooked him up with another bunkmate. I don't know. But we really didn't like it. We went to all these conventions and conferences and stuff. And we had a few drinks of scotch. Very rarely, and I mean it, rarely, too many. But, and there's the but. I hit maybe too many this one night that we were in Banff. I ended up in a little side room, these restaurant bar things that for family gatherings or a business meeting, just a little room that holds 15 to 18 people. And I ended up in there, and I was sitting there and figured out, I don't know a soul. Don and I were usually connected at the hip. Well, my hip, his knee. But we very seldom were separated very far. And I remember sitting there thinking, where am I? And to where have to I go? I was going to say, and where do I have to get to? But there's too many teachers in this room that I thought I shouldn't say that. All of a sudden, the doorway darkened, and this full-sized, fair-haired angel walked in the door. I right away got up and headed towards him. He saw me and headed towards me, took me by the elbow, and marched me out of there. Kind of the same way some of the people here know that for 3 or 4 years in my teaching career in Didsbury, I had a blind student, Norman Dick, an awesome young man. Anyway, see the way Don marched me out by the elbow, that's the same way that I maneuvered my student, Norman Dick. It was probably easier for me to get Norman through a maze of tables and chairs because Norman was just blind. Probably didn't even like the taste of scotch. I don't remember what was said, if anything. All I remember is waking up in my own bed in our room. Don was not the kind of guy you could shower with thank yous and kisses. So I stuck to just a bunch of thank yous for many years after that for getting me out of there. Don invited me to play ball with him and a bunch of other old guys, which is nice of him because I certainly was not much of an addition to help a ball team, but it was fun. It feels like we did this convention thing for about 25 years at least, but it was only 13. Don retired from teaching and went into the real estate business, but he came to one more convention after he had retired. We got a lot of giggles from local staff friends and members that when he said, the difference now is I don't have to attend a session. Which got a giggle out of a lot of our colleagues. I have had a lot of friends in my life, but Don will always stand out as one of my favorite. Now, that was pretty well the end of what I had planned. I had totally forgotten that you were talking about a scotch for everybody. So I have one more little thing. Don and Lan and I would arrive at wherever the convention was Thursday night, each with a nice bottle of single malt scotch. And that would get us through the weekend because national music, St. John's music, other music industry people sponsored the Thursday night banquet or social thing and the Friday night. Not on Saturday. The industry guys wanted to pack up early Saturday afternoon, get out of there, go home and count their money that we had all spent while they were there. So this bottle of scotch, three bottles of scotch, would last us pretty well the weekend. So I have no idea which convention it was. They're all a blur. I have no idea where they were, and nor does it matter. So got back to our room after the dinner Saturday night. They sponsored Thursday night and Friday night, the industry. Saturday night they were going home, unless Russ was there with his boss's credit card, which was, thank you again, Russ. And so we got back to our room after dinner, after supper, and I looked and I thought, excellent, I still have about a third of a bottle of Glenfiddich. Ready to go. So we got back, ready to welcome the people that were invited by probably me. And so we propped the door open so we didn't have to keep somebody get up and go and answer the door. And they just walked in. Got a drink, poured myself a nice drink. I had about a third of a bottle left. Poured myself a nice drink, got on my bed, sitting up, way up, back up against the headboard and ready to visit the last night and, you know, the afterglow when they're down. Here we go. Got talking to somebody, took my first sip of my drink and I thought, those ice cubes must have been in that thing for 2 or 3 hours. They're horrible. They're all melted. So I got off my bed, went over, poured another 2 or 3 ounces, got back in my seat, my bed, talking to somebody again, took another sip. What the hell's going on? So I went back over. I'm not much of a color guy. I don't know colors. I hate colors. But I poured again and I looked. There was no beautiful golden amber color. There was no beautiful smell. It was water. So, talked to my ever-loving, wonderful roommates, Dawn and Lan. You rotten bums, or something to that effect. And they couldn't look at me, they were looking at the floor. I should have noticed about twice throughout the evening when I was pouring myself, they went over and looked out the window of the hotel room. It's the end of October. What the hell can you see out there in the end of October at 12 o'clock at night? There ain't nothing. So I looked at it and said, you rotten bums. And I, unfortunately, and I mean this unfortunately, I was not able to see the humor that night. But the next morning when they got saying they had arrived back in the room, middle of the afternoon, Saturday, it's just about over. And they, oops, had a drink or two. Oops, their 2 bottles were gone. Oops, so was mine. And they topped it up with water, so, oh yeah, he's colorblind. What the hell is he gonna know? So, but the next morning I do have to agree, and I have to admit, I did see the humor in it. Especially watching them fidgeting around and all this, and looking at the floor and looking out the window. They knew they had done me wrong. Anyway, I thought of that after my presentation when you were talking about the scotch, and I have had a couple, thanks Don, and it's about bloody time. But mostly, Don, thank you so much for being my friend. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. We were almost on time. But we'll make up for it somehow. Don't worry. Speaking of conventions, I tell you, Don really was a corrupter. I never drank scotch till I went to a convention with Don. I'd never been to Hooters until he took me to Hooters. And at one of the conventions in Calgary, he said, let's go out for lunch, Guy. I said, okay, where are we going? He said, well, you just come along and you'll find out when we get there. It's the only time I've ever been in the French Maid. And I'm not gonna ask show of hands how many people have been in the French Maid. But that's the only time I've been in a strip club is with Don. So he's definitely a corrupter. Anyway, Grant Spence has spent a lot of time with Don during recreational activities like fishing and playing ball and so on, and he's going to elaborate on that for us. Thanks, Grant.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Grant Spence. I'm a former school teacher and met Don through Sandy. We've been friends for decades and decades. I'm old. I'm wearing the Blue Jays baseball cap in honor of Don. As you may or may not know, Don logged many, many hours watching his favorite team, and in the last few years, I think he saw probably every game that was televised. Sandy recently told me that she bought Don a ball glove and presented it and said to him, "You've been working all day with pigs. You need to get away from this farm and do something with some men." Eagle Hill slow pitch team plays on Wednesday evenings. And you know, when Sandy says something, Don follows. She said, "It's on Wednesday night, you get there." And he did. Don influenced my life in several ways. After Don began playing ball, he said, and this is in holes, "Why don't you come and play ball at Eagle Hill?" as he's said to other people as well. And I did. The Smokies and the beer after the game were usually as much fun as the ball. Don was a board member of the Eagle Hill Co-op, which later joined the Oles Co-op, and Don said, "Grant, why don't you run for the board?" And I did it. When Susan and I first wintered in Arizona, Don said, "I'll see if I can get you on one of our ball teams." And he did. And we played together for several years. As you know, Don loved fishing. Probably the best time spent with Don were on the West Coast fishing trips, which was an annual event for many years. Our good friend Warren Smith said one day, Warren and I aren't fishermen, but he had heard people say, we've gone out to the West Coast to fish for salmon. So we talked to Don and we decided, why don't we do this? So we got on the phone and phoned out to Ucluelet on the west side of Vancouver Island and booked us for 3 days of fishing. It took us 2 days to get there. I had to sleep in the cot. As you can see, I fit the cot quite well. We fished very early in the morning, and on the third day packed all our fish in ice-filled coolers and headed home. Once home, the next day was dealing with fish. Although the fish were cleaned, there was filleting to do, and Don knew how to fillet fish, and he taught us how to do it. For Don and me, it was 13 years, with various guys filling the third spot. Warren Smith, Don Fellows, Stu Becker, Vern Hamilton were some of them, and then Warren Phillips finished off the years, going 6 years in succession. To be invited, you had to be a Scotch drinker. As you may know, Dawn had a sweet tooth, and we always stopped for ice cream, going and coming. On one of these trips, the weather was quite bad, and so we couldn't fish at Ucluelet, so Dawn arranged for us to go sturgeon fishing on the Fraser River. We caught a very, very, very big sturgeon, and it took the 3 of us, Warren Phillips, Dawn, and me, to get it in, and you don't take them into the boat, you beach it, because it's so large. Gets measured, they put a tag on it, and let it go to be caught again. There's some photos of these trips, and our catch are worthy of seeing, especially Don, who was in his glory. For Don and me and the others who went, these trips were very special. When we have a drink of scotch these days, it makes us think of Don. My cap is off to my ball playing, fishing, and good friend, Don McCleary.
Thanks, Grant. I'm trying not to be bitter here. You guys get all the fun stuff, okay? Fishing, playing ball. Don phones me, he says, "Hey Chuck, I want to build a shed out in Saskatchewan." Not, do you want to go play ball? Do you want to go fishing? No, I want to build a shed out in Saskatchewan. So I said, "Oh, sure, Don, I'll go out in Saskatchewan with you and build a shed." Because he never warned me that it was mosquito season, and mosquitoes in Saskatchewan are like small helicopters. We get out, we're working on the shed. I'm the one that has to go up on the roof and do the roofing and so on the shed, because Don's too big to get up on the shed. I'm up on the roof trying to put down all these shingles and everything, swatting mosquitoes like crazy. You guys are fishing, okay? Good on you.
It's named after you.
Yeah, he did put my name on the shed, big consolation. Last but certainly not least, I'd like to introduce you to the person who was Don's right-hand man when Don was commissioner of baseball and the baseball program in Fountain in the Sun in Arizona. I gather Don and Brian met at ball tryouts down there, and Brian was the speediest little bugger you could ever have run the bases. He is speedy, honestly. As it turns out, Brian was also very speedy with sorting out finances, and is one of the only few people to admit that they're from Nipawin, Saskatchewan. So, if you wanted to put a long story, ask him about growing up in Nipawin, Saskatchewan. Brian, would you come up here, please?
Thank you, Chuck. Well, pretty much everything I was going to say has been said by somebody, but nevertheless, that's what happens when you're last, but not least, right? So in 2007, I met Don in Arizona at his very, very first softball practice. I think he and Sandy had just landed in Arizona, unpacked the car, and Don came straight to the ball diamond for a practice. Now, at that time, there were only 2 teams in our community, and each of those teams, they competed against each other for recruiting new players. So, of course, both teams were there, representatives, coaches on both, and whatnot. So picture this in your mind. So Don steps up into the batter's box. This big, strong guy proceeds to pound the softball all the way to the fence, time after time after time. Well, the coaches on both teams, their eyes light up right away. Plus, then he proceeds to show that he can actually pitch. He's an excellent pitcher. Then you get to know the guy, and, well, he's fun to be around. Well, as Chuck just said, I can't run fairly quickly, so I hustle right over to Don. As soon as he comes out to the field, I zip right over there and introduce myself. And we get talking, and he's, the first thing you say, where are you from? Well, Don lived in Alberta. Well, I said, hey, I live in Alberta. Oh, well, that's good. He said, he was born in Nipawin, Saskatchewan. I go, wait a minute. I was born in Nipawin, Saskatchewan. Really? We talked some more, and next thing you know, it was hot day. Do you like cold beer? He likes cold beer. I said, I like cold beer too. And then something this is a secret, so don't tell anyone outside this room. Breaking news. Don loves Scotch. Excuse me. I love Scotch. Needless to say, just before the practice ended, I asked Don, I said, hey, why don't you come over to my house right after the practice? Give you a cold beer or Scotch or whatever. So he did. And what he didn't know was the team I was on, one of those two competing teams, I was in charge of all the uniforms. So Don comes over, we have a drink or whatever. I said, here, try this on. Next thing you know, he goes home, and I believe Sandy can confirm this, but she said, how did practice go? And he says, I think I'm on a team. Here's my uniform. So the other team, well, too bad, too sad, too slow. Now, a few years later, when Don assumed the role of softball commissioner in Fountain of the Sun, he asked me if I would join him in running the softball club. Of course, I jumped at the opportunity to do so. Now, my primary responsibility related to raising funds to finance the softball expenses and so forth, and I was a club treasurer. Don, he looked after, basically everything else, all the operational stuff to do with the softball club. And we worked side by side for the next 8 years and became very close friends. And I think if someone came looking for me at my house and I wasn't there, they just went straight to Don's, and I was over at Don and Sandy's. We were side by side all the time. So now Don excelled in his role so much so that due to his leadership, the softball club in Fountain of the Sun grew from 2 teams to 7 teams. And his labor of love and so forth and his results were not unnoticed by the rest of the team. In fact, by the rest of the teams. In fact, as recognition of Don's significant contribution, the club invented the Don McCleary Award. And if you look at the table over there, you'll see the Don McCleary Award. And this is an annual award given out to someone who, for recognition of their outstanding contribution to the softball club. And to be named after him is a real honor, I would say. So Don and I often joked that my job was to make the money, and Don's job was to spend the money. And I hate to admit it, but Don was a little bit better at his job than I was at my job. So thank you, Don.
Thanks, Brian. I asked Brian to stay up here with me for this last little bit before we open the mic up to everybody else who would like to speak. I also want to thank Brian and Dennis Hess for doing the recording of today's proceedings and making them available to people who weren't able to attend today. But just before we open up the mic, I would like to offer a more formal toast to Don. And I asked Brian to stay up here because I could lose it. I'm hoping I won't lose it, but you never know.
He lost it several years ago.
Talking about different things. Everyone here, I'm sure, probably has their own feelings and reasons for offering up a toast to Dawn. But since I'm doing the speaking at the moment, I'm going to offer you my feelings and reasons.
Bill?
It doesn't work on him.
There are very few people in the world who have ever influenced my life like Dawn did. In addition to being a very good friend, he introduced me to Hooters, he introduced me to Scotch, he introduced me to the French maid, not her personally, but, and he introduced me to life in Arizona. As a realtor, he sold us 3 of our 4 properties, and he strongly influenced the buying of the 4th property. He was totally responsible for getting Jill and I into the rental business, and subsequently for the financial position that we're able to enjoy today. I will remember Don for all of those things. We will all remember him for his huge smile, his very friendly approach to everyone he met, and his caring and generous lifestyle. So I ask you to please join me in a toast to Don, and each of you in your own little way can thank Don. So we will we'll open up the mic now. I'm sure there are other people here who would like to say a few words. We've got humorous stories to tell. We're all here. I'm sorry that our program is running a little bit longer than we had hoped, but nonetheless, hopefully it's been well worthwhile. So if anybody else would like to come up and talk, okay. And we encourage you to remember 3 minutes.
I'd like to come up.
Okay.
My name's Rich Miller. My wife Cheryl and I have known Dawn and Sandy for about 11 years. Like many of us here today, we met Dawn and Sandy through FOS softball in Mesa, Arizona. And although I could talk about a lot of stories involving Dawn, I'll focus on one of them. And that was a trip to Emma Lake in early September of 2018. Cheryl and I had a lot of fun with the Macs during that trip. We learned to play the card game named Salad. We had a boat tour of Emma Lake, and we enjoyed lots of other activities. One part of the trip stands out for me, the day we went fishing. I knew ahead of time that Dawn loved fishing, so I came prepared. I brought my lucky fishing hat, my rain suit, and my rubber boots, and I think that I may have also brought my own fishing rod. Dawn put the boat in the water at the boat launch. He was like an expert. He'd done that so many times. And then Dawn drove the boat to one of his favorite spots, and we immediately started trolling for northern pike. We'd been fishing for about 2 minutes, and then Dawn turned to me and he said, "I bet you $5 that I'll catch the first fish." I replied, "Sure thing, it's a bet." Well, 5 seconds later, Dawn announced that he had a fish, and he promptly netted a large pike. It then dawned on me that Dawn had already hooked the fish before he announced the bet. Apparently, he had played this trick on a number of his fishing guests on previous occasions. Well, I refused to pay up, and Dawn continued to remind me over the next 6 years that I had welched on the bet. Even though Dawn did not collect on the bet that day, he did get even when we took the boat out of the water and put it on the trailer. Dawn stopped the boat about 15 feet or so from the boat launch ramp and he told me to jump in the water and hold the boat while he went to his SUV and backed the trailer into the water. What I didn't know was the depth of the water. I jumped in and it was about 4 feet deep, and I quickly filled up my rubber boots with lake water. When we pulled the boat trailer out of the water, Sandy took a video of me, and in fact there's a picture on the screen here tonight of me pulling off my boots and dumping a couple of gallons of lake water on the shore. We had a good laugh, and later we had a wonderful fish fry for supper. I'll always remember that trip, and especially discovering the sneaky side of Don McCleary.
I'll go.
What the heck, eh? Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Benedict, one of Dan's friends from high school.
And our third kid.
Third kid. Thank you for inviting me into your family. What stands out to me was that time shared with family and all of these adventures you would go on, and the hoppers coming from Saskatchewan and going to Fernie, and the driving with your family in the station wagon, listening to music, the old cassette tapes, and what stands out to me, family, and the music was always there, and the conversation. It was non-judgmental, it was welcoming. Your values as a family that you and Dawn shared with your family and extended family. I'm grateful. The influence you had on my life, thank you. And for those of you complaining about having to sleep in a cot, I recall one of these family adventures where we stayed at Pigeon Mountain in a small motel room, and just happy to be there. I'll sleep in the bathtub. Love you guys.
Okay, anybody else? Don't be afraid. You might have to listen to me some more.
I don't really know what to do. Oh, wow, that's loud. Okay, that's cool. I think I'm the only one here who can't drink scotch. So that's pretty sad. Sorry, Grandpa. It's illegal. I can't eat cheesies though. And there was one time where we visited him in the hospital. I think it was the last time I saw him. And he was in his wheelchair, and we brought him down to the lobby, and we went to go get snacks. And he was sitting in his chair. We asked what he wanted. I think he said chips, so it's okay, Dad. So we got him a bag of chips. I got myself a small bag of cheesies. We came back to the table, and we gave him the chips. He looked at my cheesies for a solid 10 seconds, and then asked to trade. And I don't know if he was expecting for me to go, hey, you're like barely functioning in a hospital, no, you cannot have cheesies. So of course I gave him my cheesies. And he was so grateful. He thanked me, I think, 5 times for the cheesies. But, of course, I was eating my chips, I was talking with my dad and with Grandma, and I look over at him, the cheesies were gone. He had disassembled the bag, so there was only like a corner left, and he was digging in the corner for the last crumbs of the cheesies. I don't know why he wanted those cheesies so bad, but he was enjoying the cheesies, and that's my favorite memory of Grandpa, because I don't remember a lot of him before he started getting sick. So, yeah. Okay.
Okay, last call before first call. I'll just remind everybody then.
She's gonna have the last word.
Okay, squirrel.
Well, I would personally like to thank all of you who did speak and contribute, because it was joyous, absolutely joyous, and that's what he wanted, something joyous. So thank you. And there are charcuterie boards over there. Please eat lots. There's lots, and we're not supposed to take it home. So eat up. This might be supper. Thanks you all for coming.
What she said. We're done.